losses in comparable oils and the advancing prairie harvest. The November canola contract gives up $3.50 at $755.30 per ton, and the January contract loses $3.60 at $763.60 per ton. Pressure on the Canadian oilseed is coming from declines in the Chicago soy complex and European rapeseed. Modest losses in global crude oil prices are applying some pressure onto the vegetable oils. Meanwhile, a little bit of support for canola is coming from upticks in Malaysian palm oil. Saskatchewan says its harvest is 2/3 complete, with the province's canola at 42% finished. Alberta releases its crop report this afternoon. The prairie weather outlook for the weekend will help speed along the harvest, with virtually no rain and temperatures in the low to mid 20 degrees Celsius. The Canadian Grain Commission reports producer deliveries of canola for the week ending September 10th are up nearly 30% at 363,000 tons. Canola exports tumble more than 84% at 22,700 tons, while domestic usage rises 12% at almost 171,000 tons. Stats Canada revises its canola production estimate for 2023-24 to 17.4 million tons, down about 7% from last year. The Canadian dollar is a pinch lower on Friday morning, with the loonie at 73.92 US cents, compared to Thursday's close of 73.99. Ahead of the report from the National Oilseed Processors Association, the trade estimates the United States soybean crush in August to be almost 168 million bushels. Corn movements in the U.S. continue to be hampered by low water levels on the Mississippi River, delaying barge traffic. The 7-day weather outlook for the U.S. Central and Southern Plains is calling for rain. Rounding off prices at the Chicago Board of Trade, soybean futures are lower on Friday morning. The November contract gives up 7 cents at $13.54 per bushel. October soy oil is virtually unchanged at 62.91 US cents per pound. October soy meal loses $1.10 at $399.30 per short ton. Corn is slightly lower as its December contract sheds 3/4 cent at $4.80 per bushel. Oats are higher as its December contract adds 4 cents at $4.83.5. The U.S. wheat complex is higher as well as Chicago December climbs 12 cents at $6.05.5. Kansas City December gains 8.5 cents at $7.45. And Minneapolis December is up 4 cents at $7.87. That's a look at the ICE futures and Chicago markets for Friday morning, September 15th. For MarketsFarm.com in Winnipeg, I'm Glenn Halleck.
Hard work has never come so easy. That's what you'll say when you take on a job with a New Holland all-purpose tractor from Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John. Whether a Workmaster Utility, PowerStar, T5, or T6 tractor, you'll maximize your productivity with exceptional power, convenience, and comfort. Buy now and take advantage of 0% financing for 60 months or cash back on these 45 to 126 PTO horsepower models. Stop in today at Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John and see how easy hard work can be. Offer ends September 13th.
The opinions expressed during this show do not represent those of this station. If you've missed any of this show, you can follow the podcast at Energeticcity.ca. Now, an in-depth look at the news and information shaping our community. This is Moose Talks with your host, Doug Craig, on Moose FM.
Welcome to another edition of the show. This morning, we're going to be sitting down with the city's Chief Financial Officer, David Joy, to talk a bit about the financial outlook he presented to City Council earlier this week and what's next in the 2024 budget process. Yep, they've already started on that. But first, Sabrina Trobak of Trobak Holistic Counselling has partnered with the City of Fort St. John to host a series of mental health workshops over the next few months, including one specifically tailored for men. I'm joined now by the host of those workshops, Sabrina Trobak. Sabrina, welcome back to Moose Talks.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Let's talk a bit about these kind of workshops in general. We were talking beforehand. You reminded me you actually sort of hosted one in partnership with the city in the spring. You got an amazing response. There was a lot of people who showed up to it. And as such, you said, why don't we do more of this since there's clearly a desire for some of these things. So tell us a bit about these workshops and sort of what goes on and then what's discussed.
So there's various topics, different topic for each workshop. The one we did in the spring is going to be similar to the one we're going to be doing this Monday, where we're just really talking about anxiety and getting a better understanding of what anxiety is, what it looks like in our body, how it's kind of created, coping strategies we can use to help manage it. For a lot of people, anxiety feels like it's this kind of cloud that comes over them and they don't really have any control over it. Once you understand how you create anxiety in your own head, in your own body, it feels more empowering to be able to kind of manage it and challenge it. So we start with that one. The next one in October, we're doing on parenting. And then the last one, we're looking at how do we learn to process and sort through our emotions in a more effective way.
I mean, this is certainly interesting because I know just me personally, anxiety went up during COVID. It's gone up since because the price of everything is more expensive. You know, I'm worried about money a lot more than it was. It feels like the anxiety source is a lot of external forces, but that's not exactly the case, is it? It's you can manage it even when all of these things that you don't have control over really are going on outside of you, right?
You're exactly right. Anxiety isn't about the external things. It's about our belief in our ability to handle it. So a lot of people say, for example, I have anxiety of flying. Well, if that was true and it was about flying, then every single person would have anxiety of flying. Not everyone does. So it's about more than that. It's about our belief in our ability to handle it. If you believe you can handle flying, you're not going to have anxiety. If you believe you can't handle flying, you're going to have more anxiety. So a lot of new things like the increase in prices and all those kind of things, we're going to have more self-doubt in our ability to handle it because it's new. It's something we haven't had to figure out, especially if we're already barely managing our finances month to month anyways. That is going to definitely increase the anxiety for sure.
So that's sort of, and if we can get into it a bit, because of course you were on the show a month ago, I think it was, because you've written a new book all about, if I remember it, your core belief is sort of kind of the big theme of it. How does that relate to sort of managing your anxiety? I suppose it's about believing in yourself to be able to manage it and then doing so.
That's exactly right. For many people, the core belief is kind of feeling good enough, important and valued, or feeling not good enough, not important, not valued. For people who struggle with anxiety, that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued, is usually more significant or more intense than the other one. And so if your core belief is not good enough, not important, not valued, you're going to have more self-doubt, you're going to lack confidence, therefore you're going to have higher anxiety. They all work together.
I see. Now these, I think we've got 3 workshops other than kind of the men only one coming up. You have to register for them at all? Is it just show up and partake?
No, we wanted to make it as easy access as possible. So there's no pre-registration required. It is a free workshop. Just show up, and if it doesn't work out for you, that's okay. But if it does, you can show up last minute. We wanted to make it as easily accessible to people as possible.
Okay. We're going to talk more about the workshops again in a few minutes, but I did want to talk specifically about the one that you designed for men. It's called Men Have Anxiety Too. I believe it's set for September 26th. So
25th.
25th. My apologies. So that's late next week if I've got my dates
It's
right.
a week this Monday.
Okay, a week this Monday. Perfect. Tell us about how that might be different than some of the other workshops. I guess, first of all, it's via Zoom, so it's a little more...
That's kind of the biggest difference there is what I'm seeing in the people who attended the workshop, the men who did attend the workshop in the spring, in the phone calls I'm getting more and more men calling, asking about mental health, wanting to work through things, but there's still that social stigma attached to, men have to be tough, they have to be strong, you can't really deal with your mental health or sort through things. So it's harder for them to go into a workshop where there's a whole bunch of people. So by doing a virtual workshop, you can access it in your truck, in your house, in your workshop, wherever you want to be. Nobody even has to know you're on. So it just allows people a bit more of a safe entrance into doing the workshop. The workshop is going to be similar, looking at anxiety, but looking at it from how men experience anxiety, which can be a bit different from women. Anger is often something that we see that's more prevalent in men. So we talk a bit about how anger is connected to anxiety as well.
And you mean kind of anger as sort of an expression of that anxiety or a source of it?
expression
I
of.
see.
Yeah. Generally, we don't like to feel our emotions, especially men. So that includes emotions like anxiety, fear, self-doubt, loneliness, vulnerability, helplessness, powerless. We don't like to feel those emotions. When we switch it to anger, we are more comfortable, more okay to feel anger. So anger becomes a way of coping with these other emotions that we don't really know how to process, we don't really want to feel. So anger is a coping strategy we use a lot of times to suppress other emotions, including anxiety.
I see. Now, is this workshop going to be, is it going to require somebody to be interactive, or can they just kind of listen in if that's kind of all they're comfortable with? Have a fake name on the Zoom call, don't have your camera on, all that good stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They can participate as much as they want to. If they want the black screen, they can have the black screen. I've got it open so you don't have to register your Zoom name and Zoom account. It can be as anonymous as people want to make it, for sure.
Okay. And again, it's also free like the
Absolutely.
other workshops.
Yeah. And no pre-registration. Just log on.
Now, I know there's a big question, but, you know, given what we've already talked about, these sort of things that we're anxious about right now, these external things like prices going up, all that. Why is it so important, even with every passing day, month, year, that we really engage with our mental health and making sure that we're keeping on top of checking in on ourselves and if you can, even with your friends and their mental health? Why is this such an important thing for people to do, and why is this maybe a good first step into a mental health journey by attending some of these workshops?
Well, one of the things that I've noticed in my 14 years of being a counselor is nothing really ever stays the same. It gets better or it gets worse. So if you're not actively addressing your mental health and working on sorting through and dealing with it in certain ways, the chances that it's going to become more and more significant is really, really high, and becomes more and more significant as time goes on. Generally, if we don't address a behavior, as time progresses, the behavior becomes more and more intense. We get used to it, so we need to make it a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger. We look at anger. If we're not dealing with our anger, over time we see that anger become more and more intense. It starts with yelling, then it's yelling and kind of pounding your fist, then it's throwing things, then it's hitting things. It progresses. So if we're not actively working on managing those things, that's what's going to happen, is we're going to see those behaviors become more and more significant. And we often usually see the time between each explosion become less and less and less as well. So it has a massive impact if we're not addressing our mental health, for sure.
Now, that being said, can this workshop sort of start to help someone along, whether they're at the start of their mental health journey and they're younger and they're sort of saying, I want to keep on top of this, or maybe you're older, maybe you've never really thought about it or approached it before, and you're having struggles with it. You've kind of let them fester away for some time. You can still be helped. You can still work and make things better, can't you? Even if you're that person, right?
Absolutely. I don't think there is an age limit or an age requirement on managing your mental health. It really, what it comes down to is your willingness to take that first step and try. And this workshop is a start. It's not going to cure anything or make anything better, but hopefully it gives you some tools that you can then think about and apply differently, give you a different understanding of your anxiety so you feel more empowered in your ability to manage it moving forward.
Okay. Well, that one's on the 25th, which is not this Monday, but next Monday. It's a Zoom call. Where can we find the links and all that to find out more information on this stuff, by the way?
So my Facebook page has the links, and the City of Fort St. John Recreation Facebook page has the links. I also have I don't even know what you call it on Instagram, the little buttons.
Okay.
I don't know what you call them.
Yeah.
There's a button there that you can click on that will direct you directly to the Zoom link as well.
Gotcha. Are they all Zoom, or are the other...
The other ones are in person.
The
only one on Zoom is the Men Have Anxiety 2 on September 25th. The other 3 are all at the Pomeroy Sports Center.
I see. Okay, perfect. Again, for more info, check out the City of Fort St. John, I think, Recreation Facebook page was sharing it, if I remember right.
I believe so.
And then Sabrina, Trobak.
Trobak Holistic Counselling Facebook page, and Trobak Holistic And NGE_Trobak on Instagram.
Gotcha. Okay. And then, by the way, the first one is coming up tonight or
No, Monday.
Monday. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And that one will be on what again?
That's understanding anxiety. So it's just the basic understanding. It's similar to the one we did in in the spring. But because we had such a good turnout, we decided to do that one again and then kind of build off of that for the one in October and the one in November.
Excellent. Well, Sabrina, I really appreciate you taking some time to do this and for hosting these wonderful, again, free workshops that anyone can attend. Thanks for stopping by to chat with us this morning.
Thanks for having me. It was nice being here.
You're very welcome. That's Sabrina Trobak with
Have
Trobak.
your eyeglasses or sunglasses
Skipping
seen
ahead
better
here.
days?
Sabrina Trobak with Trobak Holistic Counselling, hosting some mental health workshops in partnership with the City of Fort St. John. We'll be right back to talk to David Joy, the Chief Financial Officer with the city, right after this.
Have your eyeglasses or sunglasses seen better days? Then it's time to visit Merwin Optical. Their expert advice can help you choose the right frames and lenses to help you look and see your best. Second sets are always half price and they have a huge variety of brands to choose from. Same-day site testing is available for adults 19 to 64, and they can even fill your prescription from other optometry clinics. They direct bill to all major insurance companies and also provide 1-hour service on most prescriptions. Visit Merwin Optical on 101st Avenue, Facebook, and Instagram.
Windsor, see what we have in store. Windsor, we have what you need and more. Decorate, renovate, don't wait, we're great. Windsor is the place to go.
Hi, Richard here from Windsor Plywood, where our Dulux buy one get one paint sale is on now until September 25th.
Windsor, the experts you need to know.
Hey, it's Amy from United Rentals. Are you in need of small equipment for your upcoming project? Look no further than United Rentals. From power tools to aerial lifts, we have everything you need to get the job done right. Our friendly customer service team makes the rental process hassle-free so you can focus on what's important, your project. Don't waste time and money purchasing expensive equipment. Rent from United Rentals today. Visit us in-store, online, or give us a call at 250-262-3005. United Rentals is your trusted partner for all your equipment rental needs.
Steel Panther on the Prowl World Tour. September 26th, Ovenov Events Center. On sale now at the Ovenov Events Center box office or online at DawsonCreekEventCenter.com. New album, On the Prowl, out now.
Close your eyes and concentrate. You're beginning to feel sleepy. Very sleepy. Now that you're under, you're going to want to join Moose FM's ticket giveaway for the Great Ravine.
You know I'm still awake, and you're really bad at this.
Well, that's why I want to go see Ravine. It's the world's funniest and most amazing stage show.
See Ravine at the Co-op Mercer Hall at the Ovenov Events Center on October 25th. Just listen to 100.1 Moose FM for your secret word of the day. Once it's revealed, text the Fort City Chrysler line at 787-2222 for your chance to win.
Watch this show live on Facebook or download the podcast at Energeticcity.ca.
Welcome back to the show. Now it's time to start talking about the City of Fort St. John budget for next year. Yep, we're already working on that. Well, I'm not, but the city's finance department is. So the city's chief financial officer gave a presentation to council this week about the financial health of the city. To talk about that presentation and what's next for the preparation for next year's budget, I sat down with City CFO David Joy recently. Here's that conversation. David, thank you so much for being on Moose Talks today.
I'm glad to be here.
So you recently made a presentation to council, I think even earlier this week, kind of about the financial health of Fort St. John. It's kind of part of the start of the budget process for next year, as I understand it. If you can briefly, can you kind of give us some tidbits about some of the things you said in that presentation and what that financial outlook is looking like?
Well, I think it's good to provide the general public with perspective and context before we get into the operating budget. Mm-hmm. We know we have some budget challenges ahead of us, even more so than we did last year. But nonetheless, it's a time to assess ourselves against municipalities of relatively the same size in British Columbia, and to really objectively assess how we compare to these municipalities. And that was the whole point of presenting this to council.
I see. So you're not quite at the point of it's going to be this many dollars in this department. It's just, let's talk about kind of where we are at in general and prepare you for kind of what's going to be ahead, I suppose.
And that's right. And, with Site C about to become operational in 2024, we really haven't seen the population growth or the development, residential or commercial businesses. And yet, we have had there are 4 years of the past 8-9 years where we actually decreased tax revenue. We decreased taxes, and instead of increasing it moderately every year, and now we're finding we've already pared down the budget, our operating expenses. There's no fat in that at all, and the public may wonder, well, how is that possible? Well, for those 4 years that we actually decreased tax revenue, we found the savings in operating expenses. But now, going forward, we have to find more revenue or reduce service levels, or consider mitigating any potential deficits with grant revenue we receive.
All right, well, let's talk about the comparison, because this has always been fascinating to me. As you said, you compare us to similarly sized municipalities in British Columbia. Can you tell us a bit about how you decided these were the municipalities? Was it based solely on the populations in and around 20,000, sort of like what we're at?
Yeah, within 6,000 above or below our population range of 21,000 plus people that we have here.
And is there any consideration given to they have this sort of type of industry or business in the area, or is it anything like that, or is it just solely they're about the same size of us in a kind of population?
It was the most objective comparison that I could find. We can't compare ourselves to North Vancouver or Vancouver itself, or well, we do. I think we do have Kelowna in the comparison, but no, by population was the most objective way I felt that we should compare ourselves to.
Yeah, because I mean, you could sort of see how, I mean, comparing ourselves to like a Kelowna or to, I think Langley is one of the other ones in there. Their properties are worth more in general, right? So in theory, they're getting more revenue from taxation, even if the levels are about similar, right? As I understand it. So is that why you want to kind of have a broad base? Because you have, say, cities in the Lower Mainland where housing is a lot more expensive. And then you have us, and you have other places around the province too.
In another part of the year, I do a comparison of how our taxes compare to and to other communities, and I use a variance compared to our average residential value. And I do a comparison that way later in the year. But for this purposes, for the different ratios that I provided to council on our reserves or our liquidity, I just felt population was the best.
I see.
Solution.
Okay. So it's more about comparing sort of, again, the city's financial situation compared to other municipalities the same size in population. Okay. So I think one of the things, and you've already said it, is we have to look at taxation as a method of perhaps getting revenue, because, as you said, there's been years where the decreased taxation council decided to do that, and now we have to catch up because there's been other things that kind of revenue didn't come from. I feel like this was a conversation last year too, a bit, that they have some hard decisions to make. So is council really going to have to consider it this year in a way that maybe they sort of put off last year in a sense, or is it just that this is kind of how we are moving forward?
Well, each year presents different scenarios or challenges.
Yeah.
And last year was a catch-up more than anything. This year, we have collective agreement obligations that we have to satisfy, which wasn't necessarily the case when we were creating the budget last year. RCMP costs continue to go up substantially. Last year, we used $791,000 from our contingency reserve to balance the budget. We can't do that this year. We can't keep dipping into our contingency reserve. So we have to find the money somewhere this year. So things like that. We have staffing challenges. We've increased our infrastructure substantially every year. With the benefit of receiving Peace River Agreement money, and with the increase in infrastructure, that has a requirement to staff those things, like the RCMP building. Janitorial alone would double or triple for that building.
So it could be something that council has to sort of decide. Maybe they slow down on some of the infrastructure spending, at least essentially in the way the economy is, and maybe things will look better in a few years, I suppose.
Well, yes, and there's that option to consider that. I know the next big facility that the PRD is considering is the pool facility, and so how much we contribute to that. So. On an infrastructure basis. And if it's a larger facility, then more staffing is going to be required. So, it depends on the priorities for the capital program and what's necessary for the city to do. You can see all the road work going around this year, and the mill work and the resurfacing of the pavement. That all costs. That's a requirement. The public demands that we have good roads to drive our cars on and trucks on. So,
all right. Well, one kind of final question about the comparison mode. You talked about like liquidity, for example, which I think if you could explain it better than me, that's sort of cash on hand, essentially, right? How much money the city has in case of an emergency.
In case of emergency, and other municipalities of a comparable size have a higher liquidity ratio than we do, but we are middle of the pack, and we can pay if a disaster occurred. That prevented operations for the city operations to go forward. We'd be able to pay our debts for the next 6 months without any issue at all. We can pay them 3 times over with the cash that we have available. The other part of the comparisons that I put in there were based on the reserves, and other municipalities have much higher reserves than we do, but our reserve level is quite responsible for those municipalities that have over 100 million reserves, but with no specific capital projects in the horizon to finance them. They may be overtaxing their property owners, whereas we are actually using all of our reserves, the contingency, the capital reserves. So there's a rotating, it's either use it or lose it.
I see.
And I think we've been quite responsible, and we can see by our actual results that with a small and last year a larger deficit, we aren't overtaxing our property owners.
No, I just thought of this quick. You mentioned like a sort of a disaster sort of situation, an emergency. The city was on an evacuation alert for 3 days, if I remember right, in early May. There was a lot of moving parts to what's going to happen if we have to evacuate and all that. How significant of an expense can you say that was kind of that drew from sort of that emergency fund even though it was just an alert that we were under and no one actually had to leave or any of that
none of that money would come out of our reserves.
I see.
And the province is quite generous in compensating us for emergency situations. So
okay.
It doesn't affect us necessarily in a significant way financially.
I see. So the liquidity you're talking about, that wasn't impacted because of that situation. Okay. All right. Well, then what's next kind of in this process then? You've presented this to council. What's kind of the next big step for you and the budget going into next year?
Well, here it is mid-September, so we're developing our capital budget. We'll get that approved first, probably by December. But we're also we're having our staff, our managers develop and directors develop the operating budget. And we are going to really pour through that quite closely to see we need to increase our user fees to generate more revenue. And, we're looking at grant revenue to see if we can use a portion of the grant revenue, a little more than we did last year. And we're looking at all our expenses and then where we can cut, what discretionary spending that we can cut in order to reduce the tax revenue required. It is highly likely that we're going to have to increase tax revenue again for 2024. By how much we don't know yet, but all other municipalities are looking at 4, 5, 6% increases in their tax revenue.
Wow.
And there's a lot more expenses now than there were pre-COVID that we have to consider.
And finally, I think I understand this. The difference between the operating budget and the capital budget. The operating is the day-to-day city stuff, paying everybody, the things that go on throughout the year. The capital budget's sort of projects, right?
And a big difference is the operating budget does affect tax revenue, tax rate, tax revenue. Capital budget, we are in a unique position because 70% of our capital program is paid for by the Peace River Agreement money, and then our water mains and sewers, they're paid through the utility rates. And then the local area service, the local improvements, that's paid by the property owners in that particular respective streets. So there's kind of self-funding there.
Yeah,
so.
I see. All right. Yeah. Well, David, I really appreciate you taking some time to chat with us today. Thank you so much.
And thank you.
That's David Joy, the Chief Financial Officer with the City of Fort St. John. We'll be right back to wrap things up on Moose Talks right after this.
What do you want to give, Arms? I'm going to give 300.
Mark your calendars. Rhythm Auction invites you to their October 14th auction at their Mile 54 location. Why not turn your assets into cash with unlimited bidding on a very limited time? Rhythm Auction is now accepting equipment, vehicles, trailers, large pallet items, and more. Call Aaron to book your assets today. 250-261-4198 or visit rhythmauctions.com. That's October 14th. Next auction at Mile 54 off the Alaska Highway.
The Work BC Fort St. John Job Fair is looking for exhibitors. On October 26th, your company can find the right people you need to fill job openings at the Work BC Fort St. John Job Fair. FSJjobfair.ca is where you can register as an exhibitor or call us at 250-787-7100. The Work BC Fort St. John Job Fair is happening on October 26th at the Pomeroy Hotel and Conference Center. Become an exhibitor today. FSJjobfair.ca is where you can register or call us 250-787-7100.
Moose Country weather.
Sunny today. We're going to see a high of 22. Bit of wind picking up at noon, though. We'll see it become southwest 40, gusting to 60 clicks an hour. Clear sky tonight, though. We dip to a low of 5. For tomorrow, sunshine again to start, turning to a mix of sun and cloud as the day goes on. High of 16. And Sunday set to be sunny and a high of 20.
Our community first. This is Moose Talks with Dub Craig on Moose FM.
Big thanks to our guests today, Sabrina Trobak and David Joy, for joining us. If you'd like to hear this episode again, or if you'd like to hear an old episode of Moose Talks, make sure you check the Energeticcity.ca podcast page. You'll find past episodes of this show there, along with all episodes of Secrets of the North, before the piece and voices of the piece archived for your listening pleasure. If you'd like to see the video version of this again, that is also available. Just check out the Moose FM Facebook page. Click on the videos section. That's our show. Jordan Prentice and Trey Lopashinsky are the producers of Moose Talks. I'm Dub Craig. Have a great weekend.
Join us next Friday at 10 a.m. for another episode of Moose Talks, a weekly talk show about Fort St. John and the North Peace.